Mr. Mayor, it's 5:29 and 42. The live stream has started, so in just a few moments you may gavel the meeting in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And we're all set.
Okay. Good afternoon, councilors and SLT and the viewing public. I see that we have quorum. I will now call into session this regular meeting of council for Tuesday, April the 6th. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the April 6th, 2021 regular meeting of council be adopted. Members of council, I do have a note that Councillor Stewart is not able to join us this evening, and she would like her motion postponed to April 19th. So that would be an amendment to the agenda. And Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for any further amendments.
Madam Clerk, I'd also like to point out that at the notice of motion, I will be bringing one forward.
And are there any other additions to the agenda, members of council?
Any other agendas, councilors? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote will start with Councillor Hahn to adopt the agenda as amended.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Members, that motion carries.
Okay. Now, councilors, anyone after viewing the agenda, does anyone have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? And Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, for the last approximately 2.5 years, I've made a declaration that there was a conflict of interest for any discussions pertaining to Mountain View Homes. An officer of Mountain View Homes contributed personally to my election campaign. But recently it's come to my attention that this individual has been retired from Mountain View Homes since December 2019. Upon receiving that information, I reached out to our integrity commissioner and asked them if I need to declare a conflict of interest. And this is what he wrote back to me today. The reason for such a declaration was simply because you received a political donation from a couple, one of whom was then employed by such developer, but has now actually retired from that organization in December 2019. You have also advised that you have not spoken to the contributor since the last election, but you do understand he no longer has any personal interest in the developer's business. Based on these facts, I see no reason for you to continue declaring a conflict of interest with respect to matters affecting the developer that may come before council. So going forward, I will not be declaring a conflict of interest with any business pertaining to Mountain View Homes.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have noted that in the minutes for the information of the public. The next item on the agenda then, if there are no other disclosures, the next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 pandemic update by the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, Bob Limburner.
Chief, you have the floor.
Evening, Mayor, councilors, SLT, and members of the public. Let's get some things up here. A few stats. So as of today, Pelham has had a total case count of 347, total active cases 31. Niagara region total case count 10,254. We had 74 today. Total active 799, total resolved 9,079, total fatalities 376. As far as Niagara region variants go, they've detected 337 and they've confirmed 12 cases. Niagara region cases predominantly are the 20 to 39-year-olds. On a good note, the 80 plus demographics represent the lowest number of active cases, which is very good. Ontario province-wide, 367,602 total cases, 333,576 resolved, with fatalities at 7,458. Ontario hospital admissions are up, being in the big centers, especially Toronto, are being taxed. They're at 1,161 total admissions. Of those, 510 are in ICU, and of those, 310 are on ventilators. Across the country, we're at 1,177,051 cases, total cases, 938,549 resolved, and our death count is at 23,120. Niagara's case doubling time is at 75 days. Our reproduction rate has increased again this week to 1.4. Positivity remains at 3.7. Public outbreak in Niagara is currently working with 31 active outbreaks. They've resolved 275. As far as infection goes across the region, 71.2% are contact with known cases. Community spread at 20.5%, unknown spread 5.4%, and travel 2.9%. As far as vaccines administered, Niagara has administered 88,809. Ontario, 2.6 million, just over 2.6 million. And Canada, 6,671,570. As far as our provincial indicators go, our reproduction rate is in red. Our new cases per 100,000 population is in red. New cases daily average is in red. Percentage of new cases with unknown spread is in orange. Positivity rates red, and our hospital admissions is in green. As of today, the province is allowing, or starting tomorrow, they announced today that the province is allowing persons age 60 plus to book appointments starting April 7th. The province is also allowing persons 50 plus who live in designated hotspots to book appointments starting tomorrow. And Niagara has one hotspot, and it goes by postal code, and the hotspot postal code is L2G. Province has overbooked some sites, and unfortunately, there's some residents are getting phone calls that they need to reschedule their appointments, and I'm sure there's some counselors that received some phone calls from some of our residents regarding this, but Public Health has assured us that they will reschedule everything very shortly. So it's unfortunate that the province has overbooked some of these sites. And as of this morning, the MCC is all set up, ready to go. The first vaccination is set for 9 a.m. Thursday morning. So we're good to go. Pretty excited about all that. They did a great job, and staff at the MCC did a great job setting up the facility, and it looks good. So that's the end of my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you for that, Chief. Any councillors have any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Wink.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor. I was one of the councillors that received phone call from a resident who got double booked, and he had been waiting for quite some time to get vaccinated. He chose to wait for the vaccination clinic to be open in Pelham. He and his wife had a set date, and now he got a phone call today to say that he got bumped. So his vaccinations are being delayed by 5 days or so, but the downside is he now has to go to St. Catharines for his vaccination. He's 81 years old. He doesn't drive very much, and his wife is, I believe he said 78, and she's got cancer, and they're being displaced with respect to the vaccinations here in town.
Chief, is there any way she could be put on, they could be given public transportation? I know that's available to some, to the residents.
I'm sure, well, Director of RCW, I'm sure she can talk to transit better than I can, but try to explain what's going on with the bookings is the regional public health units have set up inoculation centers, and in Niagara there's either a 6, a 12, or a 20 site. Pelham is a 12 site, meaning they have 12 stations. The provincial booking software is designed only on 20s. So if you have a 12 site, then there's people booking over the 12 because the system thinks it's a 20. And they can't, from region to region, they can't fix that. It's province-wide. It's unfortunate. I think that couple, I talked to staff today, and I think that they had contact with that couple. If they can reach out to me directly, you can give them my cell number. I'll make sure they get an appointment, and I'll make sure they get there. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chief. They do have an appointment. They've got their first and second vaccination scheduled, but if transportation becomes an issue, I appreciate you looking into that.
Yeah, transportation won't be an issue because if we can't find public transit to get them there, if you or the resident like to call me, I will make sure that they get there.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief Limburner, any other comments on this report? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to get it in the record, moved by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for information. If there is no further discussion, I'll start the vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Members of Council, that motion carries.
Okay. Next up is the pandemic report given by the CAO. Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. 2 items for your consideration. Getting some feedback here. Excuse me. If that's better. I apologize. Item 1 is that, as the chief indicated, the South Gym and the MCC is now set up, and we have new flooring installed, which is sort of a protective matting over top the entirety of the floor, which we're quite proud of and believe is going to help us offer any number of other events in the future when, of course, we're able to physically congregate again and avoids damaging the infrastructure. So that's a really nice piece we're all quite proud of. And I encourage everyone who goes out to get their vaccination at the MCC to take a look at what they're walking on when they're heading towards the dreaded needle. It'll be a good distraction. So that's item 1. And item 2, just to let council know, in the spirit of transparency to the public, staff have been, we have made arrangements, and we have 2 staff have opted for voluntary layoff, but otherwise all staff members at the MCC are either still working at the MCC or have been seconded to Public Works or have been seconded over to both to Public Works and to planning to continue with the digitization of the corporate records. So we have 2 types of accommodation work that needs to be done in-house in the corporation, and voluntary layoffs. Were the 3 options, and people took some of each. So that's how we're proceeding on an operational basis. Subject to questions, that's my report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions or comments? If I may, Mr. CEO, one question, and hopefully I don't put you on the spot. I know the staff have been working at the digitalization quite a while. Any idea of the percentage that we've done or left to go, perhaps?
Well, I myself asked a question not dissimilar to that, and really, I think tremendous progress has been made on what I would refer to as old planning documents, the sort of the large map type surveys of property and the like. But we have plenty of others. You know, we've had this big project on the books for quite a long time, and to try to move all of our records into modern computer readable format. So it's happening with more than just those big sort of map-like very large documents. And because of that, I have no way of giving you a percentage answer other than to say it's proceeding at the pace of I think it's 5 human beings operating the scanners and whatever they can get done in a day. So going through a considerable volume at this point in time.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And just a note on behalf of the Public Relations and Communications Specialist, the Meridian Community Center is closed to the public under this current lockdown, but it will be open as the inoculation site as scheduled. We did have some questions on that today, so we just wanted to make that public service announcement. So now I have a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribs, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. If there is no further discussion, the vote will start with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olsen.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, that motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is a delegation by the Regional Municipality of Niagara Regional Transit, Robert Selowich, Program Manager for Transit Services, and it's with regard to the Transit on Demand Pilot Renewal Program. See that he is present.
Hey, Robert, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just bear with me for a moment.
So our deputy clerk is going to share her screen, and she does have your updated presentation, Robert. Members of council did receive that by email today with the updated statistics.
Great. You took the words right out of my mouth. So thank you very much. I did just want to make a quick mention and a thank you to staff member Leah Lane at Niagara Region for working this afternoon to get everyone the last minute data that came out over the long weekend. So a quick thank you to her, and certainly I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone again. And today we're just going to go through a little bit of an update in terms of NRT on demand. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit just about the renewal and why we're here in April talking about a renewal for something that is supposed to end in August. Okay, the next slide. Thank you. So a quick agenda for today. We'll go over the background, the service parameters, and the pilot goals. Most of that is just going to be a reminder for everyone. It's information we had shared in a number of preservations that we've done here for you. In addition, we'll go over some of the metrics and reporting, accessibility concerns or opportunities, not really concerns, as well as the local engagement in the pilot renewal that I had mentioned. Next slide, please. So really quickly, again, we started this in August with a 12-month pilot. It was set to renew in both our agreement with the town and the region's agreement with VIA. We do have an option for a second year, and given the starting in the pandemic, we find ourselves in need of additional data. Local contributors paying for the service in order to get access to that local service that others do not: Grimsby, Pelham, and Lincoln. And as you are likely aware, Niagara and the Lake joined in with an additional service area a couple of months after your service area launched. Next slide, please. Like I said, these are all items we've all gone over before: 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in terms of the service area, as well as connections not only in West Niagara, but to St. Catharines, Welland, and Port Colborne. As you can see there, we do have the Winona Crossing Shopping Center. That is still very much in the works. All of the parties are interested. We are just trying to cross all of our T's and dot our I's, let's just say, and get that worked out. And next slide, please. This one is merely just for context, so you can see that in Niagara-on-the-Lake, they currently have a different type of service area where they've limited things to one very specific corridor. They've recently begun dialogue to expand it to the entire municipality, like we have in Pelham, Grimsby, and Lincoln. So I don't think that this map will be valid for long, but we'll see how that goes along. Next slide, please. In terms of our pilot goals, you know, we had quite a few of them, but the one I think we want to make mention most often of is that we wanted to maximize the coverage areas and provide access for everyone by increasing connectivity. And I think the difference between the two maps that we just showed highlights the fact that you can, in fact, meet that goal right from the very start of the pilot. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's where the data gets a little bit updated since the last time. We have 14,633 trips that have run on the service, or rides. Those are individual users or trips that have been taken on the service, and that's since August 17th, so since the start. We heard some feedback that there would be some interest in seeing the average wait time, so we've provided that for you. It's currently set at 16 minutes. With the average trip length only being about 13 minutes. And so that basically means riders are getting where they want to go, including the wait, in half an hour, which I think is pretty fantastic to start on average, at least. On the right-hand side, you can just see the split there a little bit. Over half of the trips are done locally within a municipality, but still 46% is basically 50. And we're really showing that people not only need to get around their own communities, but that Niagara itself is still part of their community and they need to get around to those other areas as well. Next slide, please. So this one can be a little bit difficult to see just depending on where the faces are on your Zoom, but this is essentially a week-by-week ridership, and we color-coded it based on the provincial restrictions. So as you can see, we launched, everything was going swimmingly, and then we started to get into the yellow protect, the orange restrict, and then obviously into red control and gray lockdown after Christmas. And ridership, I'm sure nobody is surprised to see drops right off entirely. However, one thing that I would say is a little bit surprising on our end is that things have started to pick back up really even prior to us coming off of, you know, the gray or red restrictions. So I think part of it's indicative of the word getting out and people are using the service for the trips they need. And I think, to be fair, people are also probably a little bit tired of COVID and a little bit tired of winter and are just, you know, starting to make maybe a few more trips than they would have otherwise. Next slide, please. So specific to Pelham, we're at 2,292 rides. Those are 2,173 individual trips. So that's the times that vehicles made the trip, whereas the 2292 is rides. And you actually have a little bit less of an average wait time sitting at 14 minutes. And just lastly, it does seem in Pelham there's a bit of a drop off, I think, after 7 o'clock. And I think that's more indicative of the fact that pretty much nothing is open. And if things are open, they're sort of only during regular business hours. So overall, the service doesn't really have the same typical drop off quite so, or that time in the evening. So I expect that to change as things start to open up. Next slide. And here again is a bit of a split, just a visual for you. You can see where people who are in Pelham and they're leaving, where are they traveling to most? That's the graphic on the left. So you can see they're really heading basically everywhere that the service travels. And then for those trips that are staying within your municipality, you know, where are they heading to, or where are they starting from? And so again, you're getting a nice wide coverage area and you're providing service to everybody within your municipality. Next slide. As far as feedback, so I mean, I think that trip rating speaks for itself. Of the roughly 800 ratings that we've had, 742 of them have been 5-star. Of course, there's been a few one-offs. The vehicle drove by me while I was standing there, or I didn't see it, or my call got canceled. There are definitely some one-offs, but overall, I think we've heard very good things about the service. If I would say that there was one desire for something that we're not doing, it would be to try and assist those people that maybe either don't have access to a smartphone or are having difficulty making their trip to get back home once they've traveled out. And we are actively working on a solution for that. We're hoping by summer to put that into place, and that'll be the opportunity to give residents, the opportunity to pre-book their trips. But I could talk about that in just a moment later as well. Next slide, please. So just for comparison, I guess it's important to break this down by a couple of pieces here. So if we look at January, February, and March of 2020, so maybe not March because COVID had started, but definitely the first 2 months, Pelham Transit had 796 and 737 riders on its service. And at the highest we have had thus far is 397. So basically half. So from that standpoint, we're well on our way. I think a few months in and during a pandemic, that's a very good marker. And the reason why we feel that way is because if we also look at the April, May, June, July, and that August is the first half of August that Pelham Transit was operating, but during the pandemic, you can see that a significantly higher number of trips have been taken on NRT On Demand, and those trips are only specific to Pelham as well. So it's important to note that given the pandemic, things are going really well. However, as we come out of the pandemic, we definitely still have some work to do in order to get our numbers back where the Pelham Transit numbers were at before COVID changed everything for everybody. So please, next slide. This one, I think, has been on some previous presentations, but I really just wanted to reiterate that a lot of the items and features of NRT On Demand are available because the region had done a study evaluating its service provider for Niagara Specialized Transit. And not just of its service provider, but of the service as well. It was sort of a dual study. And what we found is that there are elements that people who are using our specialized service would like to use in a regular service. So they want something like a same-day booking service. They want to be able to book digitally or over the phone and have multiple payment options. They don't want to have to apply. Public transit is supposed to be a public service, and having to go down to your doctor's office can be a real challenge, especially for those that are lacking transportation options to begin with. And then lastly, commingling of specialized passengers and non-specialized. I think this one goes hand in hand with the applications. Really having one service that can meet the needs of the community is the goal, and something that we're actively looking at. So these features are things that we have in NRT On Demand, and the purpose of having them there is to get a good sense of how they work so that we can hopefully combine our specialized transit service with our on-demand service one day and run them both as a singular service as opposed to simultaneously. Next slide, please. So local engagement, I think everybody recognizes this one has been a tough one for the past year. Right from the start, the region has had a communications plan, and we continue to update that plan. And right now, I think what we're most stuck on is the balance of trying to promote the service while respecting the fact that public health is asking everyone to please stay home, given the rise in numbers. And so we're trying to be patient and wait for things to maybe get a little bit more under control. But we've already started reaching out to food banks and employment centers, long-term care homes, the high schools, the downtown improvement or business improvement areas. We've been doing presentations, Lincoln Chamber of Council. We have one coming up for Grimsby. I've talked to Pelham Care. So we are doing everything that we can within the restrictions that we have. But certainly as we come out the other side, we're hoping that something more can be done. There is one item that we have sort of outstanding. It's a little bit lost in limbo, if I'm being frank, and we had looked at doing some sort of a delivery, like a mail order delivery to each resident. But we struggled in some of the conversations about the overall value in getting something out to every home versus B, more localized or focused efforts, focusing on word of mouth, which is always the biggest effort in getting things out there. So we're sort of in between right now. It hasn't been shelved officially, but we're really struggling with an efficient and valued way of getting at least some ridership in terms of when we share that information with the public. Next slide, please. So why are we here talking about a pilot renewal in April when we know that the renewal date is in August? And frankly, what it comes down to is simply the fact of timing. If we are going to continue to operate service and or make any changes, there is a little bit of time in preparing for that. If yourselves felt that there was not a desire to proceed for a second year, we would want to make some changes, certainly. And to be fair to town staff, there would be a significant amount of work necessary to restart, I assume, Pelham Transit, if in fact the intent was to not renew until next year. The last thing that I'll leave everyone with is just in trying to separate for you. I know there is a lot of transit news coming out of the region lately, whether it's governance or Go Transit or NRT on demand. But I just want to make sure that everyone has it clear that NRT on demand and governance are two separate topics. We can continue on with NRT on demand indefinitely, regardless of which way that the governance process goes. Alternatively, that governance process is something that you will have a say in order to direct the future of your transit services. So when you're looking at it, your costs you're always going to need to provide some sort of transit service. Clearly, your residents are desiring that. And we just think it's important that you recognize that vote will be coming later on in the summer and really doesn't impact whether or not you choose to renew. This program should exist until such a time that a transition takes place with a new entity. And with that said, at the will of council, if there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to hear them now.
Great. Thank you for that presentation, Robert. Very informative. That 14-minute wait time, that's pretty impressive, that's for sure. I'll turn over to council now. Any comments? I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. Now I'm going to give you my wish list. Number one, you hit my first wish list. That's for the residents who don't have smartphones to be able to book rides to and from their home. I think that's a winner. And my second wish list is to eliminate the transit hub at Welland because the bus drives right by the Seaway Mall and it's an extra 10 minutes to get there, and then they have to get on a bus to go back to the Seaway Mall. Our transit system drove to Niagara College and the Seaway Mall. If we could make those adjustments, that's my number two wish. My number three item is that on March the 29th, the Government of Canada announced the first federal fund dedication for rural transit solutions of $250 million over 5 years. And are you applying?
Through you, Chair, thank you for those. So the one question that I think I heard in there is, are we applying? And that is a great question. I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately, Councillor. We've just begun going through that documentation, but based on what we've seen so far, it seems that there will be an opportunity to find a way for this program. But frankly, we haven't been through it all for me to give you a detailed answer on that front.
Okay, I have one last question, and that regards specialized transit, which is different than Niagara Region on Demand. How many riders from Pelham have taken specialized transit or are taking specialized transit?
Through you, Chair, give me a quick moment. I can just see if I have that information. We were trying to pull that together today. Just let me see if I do have that really quickly here for you. So unfortunately, let's see. So I don't have it specific for Pelham, unfortunately, but I can let you know for March 1st to 15th, NST only delivered 717 trips. So let's assume it was basically the same for both. That's 1,400 trips for the entire service that we did during that month, where NRT On Demand has done 3,000 for that same month. So we're doing more trips across the board, but unfortunately, Councillor, I wasn't able to find the Pelham specific number for NST before the meeting.
Yeah, if you'd be able to get that to me in the future, that'd be appreciated. And what are the chances of us being able to change the Welland Transit Hub for the Seaway Mall and Niagara College?
Through you, Chair, I think that's a conversation that requires additional discussion between municipalities. And whether or not we require the CAO of Pelham and Welland in order to make that possible. It's on our desire list as well as not only to provide the Seaway Mall, but locations like the hospitals, both St. Catharines and Welland, as well as the location across the street from Brock. So we're hopeful to add some in, but there are some jurisdictional restrictions that are not making it as easy as one would hope.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Rob. Thank you very much, Rob, for the report. The satisfaction statistics are pretty remarkable, really. Five rating on number of rides that we've delivered, and I'm looking at this like a system that's approaching some kind of operational maturity. And I have a lot of confidence that you're going to solve these issues as they come up, and between you and the RCW there, that's going to happen, I think. I would like to see a couple of things since we're making wish lists. I would like to see some adjustments to the outreach, so that you mentioned the mail. I think there are people that need individual attention and perhaps personal contact as much as possible to be able to do this. We talked previously about pre-booking as a possible solution to some of the things. I would like to see Sunday service, if you could consider that. That might be something to think about. I looked at the hours of operation, and they look like they coincide very closely with the other transit systems. So I can see why you did that. But those would be a couple of the things that I would be interested in. But I think we need transit, and I think you picked the proper model, and I think you probably picked the proper supplier, knowing the process that you went through. So I'm quite satisfied with it. My last, I guess, wish would be, would be a question is, why did we have a 1-year extension and not a 2-year extension? So I'll leave that for you.
Robert?
Through you, Chair. I think the reason is because we thought that the governance process would be further along. When we started on this agreement, even with VIA, it was well before COVID. We had our agreements in place with them prior to COVID as well. So the reason why it didn't have multiple extensions is we really thought that basically by now that governance decision would have been put to the respective local councils, and any renewal at all would have been renewing up until the termination date of the, assuming consolidation goes through to the termination date of that service. So bad timing, I guess, is the answer as to why we didn't have a 2-year extension.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions? And Robert, just you did mention briefly, touched on the outreach, and what is it that you're leaning on? I know that obviously mail outs are very expensive. What else were you looking at to get to these people that don't have internet and and lack other forms of communications. What are you guys looking at?
Through you, Chair. So I think what we've tried to do is take a blanket approach and see what has worked. So, social media has been absolutely fantastic in terms of driving people to the app and then to have them use it. Word of mouth has been by far the biggest, by more than double from what we can tell in terms of converting people into riders. We've put things out in the newspaper, both local and weeklies. We have been on the radio. We have had articles written about us, I think, in virtually every publication locally and across Niagara. And we've been on CHCH in Hamilton. So I think we've been out there. In the past, we've done other things like we've put billboards up. We have swag that we got and we had hoped to give out at a variety of the face-to-face events that, as we talked about earlier, we haven't been able to go to any of them. So we have all of these boxes of things waiting to give away that we haven't had the opportunity to do. So COVID's really been the sort of steel wall at which we find ourselves bouncing ideas to see what we can do. And that's sort of why the mailer item is still hanging out there, I think. Without having been done, is for a while it maybe looked like things were maybe more under control, and as we start to enter into a third wave, it's clear that we've got maybe a moderate to long way to go still. Excellent,
thank you for that. Lots of examples on what you've been doing, so pretty impressive. Keep up the good work that way. Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to Rob, I'm reading through a place to grow, and there's a section 3.2.3, moving people. I assume that this satisfies all of the requirements of a place to grow and Schedule 5 of that document as well. I checked with our planning department, and we believe it does. But I wanted to ask you.
Through you, Chair. To be fair, I'm not entirely familiar with that excerpt, okay. And but from my understanding is yes, we're in compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Robert, thank you for the presentation. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Mr. Robert Selowich, Program Manager, Transit Services, regarding the Niagara Region Transit On Demand pilot renewal for information, and that Council approve the renewal of the Region Town Service Partnership for Year 2 of the Region's On Demand pilot program with Via Mobility. Are there any questions or discussion on the motion?
Not seeing any.
I will start the vote then with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
For you, Mr. Mayor, that motion carries.
Okay. Again, thank you, Robert.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, the regional councillor is not in attendance this evening, so the next item is item 5.1, moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated in red. C05-2021, Council Minutes of March 22nd, 2021. If you'd like to call for errors or omissions.
Thank you. After viewing the minutes, did any councillor have any comments or questions about said minutes? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And this vote will start with Councillor Wink, please.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Members of Council, that motion is carried. Members of council, we have an item, business arising from council minutes. It's a letter of correspondence from Mountain View. So to open the discussion on it, I will present the motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that council received the correspondence from Mountain View Building Group dated March 26th of 2021 regarding the Park Place South Development Application 26T19-02-2020 and AM0820. And that council refer the matter back to staff for further review, specifically as it pertains to the construction of 8-unit back-to-back townhouse developments, and that council directs staff to provide an update report based on the concept drawings appended to this correspondence. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any comments, discussion on this motion?
You have a couple of councillors with their hands
Oh,
up
I'm
there.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Wink.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just some comments and really, I think when this came before council 2 weeks ago, there was unclarity with respect to what these types of back-to-back townhouses would look like, what would be entailed with them, and I think perhaps hindsight is great, and I respect council's decision, but it would have probably been better to defer the whole motion at that point in time to get a better understanding of what these units are. If we go to semi-detached units, the price of those units are going to be significantly higher than a townhouse unit, thereby affecting affordability for the purchasers and whatever. So, I would support seeing this go back to staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, I would agree with Councillor Wink that certainly we were not provided at the last meeting, contrary to the local tabloid, to suggest that we were provided information as to the appearance of these. We were not. Also, too, staff was given an opportunity to comment, which also wasn't true in the paper. In fact, so much so that I asked questions about, where would barbecues go? Would there be a rooftop patio? What would these look like? But there weren't answers at that time. So there were opportunities, but we didn't have that information given to us at the time. So Councillor Wink is absolutely correct there. But I also am overjoyed to know that these are apparently affordable houses, because that is not something that also was addressed in the last meeting. The term now affordable housing has been thrown around in the local paper, but I think it's important to understand that the actual term of affordable housing for the province of Ontario is that it's a unit for which the rent does not exceed 30% of the gross annual household income for low and moderate income households, or 2, a unit for which the rent is at or far below the market rent of a unit in the regional market area. I'm going to hazard a guess that that's not actually the case here, and perhaps the director of planning can confirm. But I think the paper has erroneously projected these to be affordable homes, which they are in fact not. They may be more affordable in that if your house is $1 million, as mine's $999,000, that doesn't make mine affordable either. So I think there just needs to be some clarification out there for our viewing public.
Any comments on that from the Director of Planning?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think Councillor Hahn quoted in terms of the affordability requirement is might have been something out of the PPS that speaks to rent. These I don't believe will be rental units. They will be for sale, but there is similarly a similar type of definition for affordability for home ownership, and it's tied to the the percentage of money that you spend out of your income on a house. So there is that tie. Whether or not these will be affordable and meet that definition, I cannot answer that. I don't know what these houses are being marketed at or what their price point will be, but they will be certainly less than other single detached and or other conventional townhouses. But I can't say for certain that they will be meeting the affordability criteria and target as established through the PPS. That's something I'm not able to comment on.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the Director of Planning. Yes, and federally, the CMHC defines affordable housing as shelter costs that equate to less than 30% of the household pre-tax income. So yeah, I'm highly doubtful that that's what these are going to fall into. I just want to make the record clear because clearly there's miscommunication that's been intentionally put out there, that and the fact that somehow I'm against affordable housing, which of course I'm not, considering in the last meeting that we had a development proposed to us on Pelham Street. I actually asked if there was any way they could consider putting affordable housing in some of the units proposed. So clearly I'm a fan, but I don't think that's what's going to be happening here. And I think that's important that the public know the truth here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I see the Director again, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This type of housing does attract kind of the first-time home buyer because of its size and the amenities that it has in it. So it does attract that. Its price point is certainly less than conventional housing. And so that's kind of the market that it does attract. Again, I cannot say that it would be affordable, but it will help in terms of people building equity in a housing market.
And if I might just respond to that too, and now that I've actually seen for the first time a picture of them, there are attractive units, and it would have been nice to see them before. So now that I've seen them, they are attractive. But I think I really would like, if the staff are going to go back and provide a report to us, what I'd like to see is just some information provided as to the questions that I articulated the first go around, and that was where are people going to be doing things like the barbecuing. I don't think we want to have people out on the street or in their front yard or necessarily in their driveway barbecuing, or patio chairs and things of the like, trash cans, all those kinds of things. You're going to have an area where you've got a lot of homes that are going to be fairly expensive, and I think that just generally speaking, people in the area are going to have an expectation and want to understand how interior units that don't have side yards, don't have backyards, where those kinds of items and activities would be done. I think that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. See Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to make a comment. I talked to Ken Goodhue, if I pronounce his name properly. He mentioned that the price of these units would be slightly below $550,000 to $600,000, and the square footage is going to be 1,100 square feet for the inner ones and 1,300 square feet for the outer ones. And again, Councillor Hahn says, I support affordable housing, and it's sad that the communication can't be, accurate at all times. So anyway, I'm glad we're going to be reviewing this again, and the more information we get, the better judgment we can make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the voting will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, that vote carries unanimously. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is an item to lift items from the consent agenda.
Any councillors have an item to lift? I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to lift item 8.5.1.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk will note that. Any other items to be lifted? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Wink, Be it resolved that consent agenda items as listed on the April 6, 2021 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. And there was a proclamation request for Pitch-In Week, a proclamation request for Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month. And the next item has been lifted. There's a Norfolk County resolution with regard to carbon tax to be received. Regional Report CSD 81-2020 with regard to the Niagara Region Courts intermunicipal agreement. And that's just to receive for information. More information will follow later on in the spring. The annual report of the Integrity Commissioner is submitted for information, and report IC 126270221, as well as Ontario News release with regard to the consultation to strengthen municipal codes of conduct information sheet, and the Pelham Library Board minutes from January 27th, and the Cannabis Control Committee minutes from January 20th, 2021. Without changing any of the recommendations, do members of council have any questions on the consent agenda items? I do see some hands up.
Yes. Okay, Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.7.1, I'd like to lift the minutes for the Pelham Library.
Is it to make a separate motion or just to make a comment on the minutes?
To make a comment.
Okay, so that doesn't have to be lifted. You can go ahead with your comment, Councillor Olson.
At this point?
Yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. Once again, I read through all the minutes of the library board, and there's terrific work being done there. One mention was made of a press release on the proposed Union Library, which is now public knowledge. Is that going to happen, or?
Mr. CAO?
Well, I know that 4 people worked on the press release. I thought it had been issued. It wasn't issued directly by this administration. So you have me at a disadvantage, sir. I thought it had been, but of course I make mistakes quite frequently and may well be wrong.
Well, I could be mistaken through too, guys. I just haven't seen anything. So
all I can say is I specifically recall working to make sure all 4 of our corporate symbols were at the top of the page, and that we came to unanimity on the text, and okay. I believe that was released, but I feel like that was maybe a month ago, actually. But
okay, Councillor.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I may be wrong, but I thought I would. I thought I'd be aware of something like that, so.
Yep. Well, perhaps Mr. CAO can look into that for council.
I will get back to council with a proper update, and I will confirm sometime tomorrow.
Excuse me,
Thank you, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The Public Relations and Communications Specialist indicates that it was released on February 2nd. We can certainly forward that to members of council for additional information.
Okay, Councillor Olson, you have your answer then. February 2nd, it was released. Any other comments?
Maybe I was asleep.
There's also a copy on the website through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Maybe I was asleep or I was muted. Maybe that was what it was.
Yeah. Yes, it was that mute button. Yes. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to draw attention to item 8.5.3. That's the regional report amending the agreement to the Niagara Region Intermunicipal Agreement. And I'd like to make sure that all the councillors read it, because what's significant in there is the fact that there's a funding issue in there. And the fact is, we receive funding right now in a 50-50 split with the region with regards to enforcement. And the region is now proposing to go take it 100% to the region on their Vision Zero program. To me, this is another case where the region is downloading costs to the municipality by taking away our revenue. And I really don't appreciate that kind of action. So if everyone, I understand that the region is coming to give us a presentation on April the 19th. And if everyone could read that report, that would help us when we're having an active discussion with the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Perhaps Mr. CEO, do you have any, at this time, any information on this report from the region, or shall we wait?
I do, Your Worship. Fundamentally, the proposition that that will be put before council is a proposal to take 100% of the revenues from the Niagara Region POA courts, which in turn derive most of their revenues from traffic tickets, as the overwhelming majority of the volume of the charges before the municipally run courts. And as council is aware, we currently receive, we're at 1 or 2%. Pelham is, I don't remember which, but a percentage point or two of the net Pelham receives as its share. So the proposal is to forego that revenue, and the region has Vision Zero refers to a vision of having no traffic accidents and perfect traffic safety in the future. And they would redirect those funds rather than distribute them to municipalities to use as they see fit. The money would be reinvested into enhanced traffic safety measures, such as photo radar, such as improved sight lines, such as increased enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. Some engineered solutions and then some enforcement solutions and the like. So that's the nub of the proposition. Pelham would have to forego a revenue stream. The revenue stream would be redirected towards traffic safety. The region would do the work and would forego its larger share of the revenue if the partner municipalities would also forego theirs, in a nutshell.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. CEO, I believe the big part of this whole initiative is the cameras at intersections, catching speeders or people running red lights. I believe that's the...
Those are some of the enforcement methods. You'll get the whole presentation from people who are doing this for a living right now. But you're correct, Your Worship. That is an element of it. There will be traffic camera controlled intersections.
Councillor Hildebrand, any further comments on that particular one?
No, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Before we get to Councillor Hildebrand's, if I don't see any, I would just like to draw everyone's attention to 8.4.1. It's the pitch-in that is taking place April 18th to 24th, cleaning up the community streets after a long winter. Council will be pleased to know that I have corralled the CAO, and him and myself will be taking on a street yet to be named, and we will bring that street and make it spick and span for the residents. So that's coming sometime when Mr. CAO can fit it into his schedule. Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Pictures $1 a piece, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Councillor Hahn?
Just on the topic of cleaning up the streets and whatnot. Just wondering, I'm noticing some streets that used to have the signs that said they were sponsored by certain groups. People would buy a stretch of area and put up a sign, and usually every now and again, folks would gather a group of people from that company, go out and pick up litter. I'm not noticing that's happening as often, and I'm noticing as well that a lot of the signs that used to be up aren't even up anymore. Is that program going by the wayside, or is it just on a lull, or is it COVID, or where are we at with that, and why am I not seeing as many signs and people doing this anymore?
So I see the Director of Recreation has her hand. Go ahead, Ms. Van Ravensway.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, that program is still in place. We have agreements signed, and as the agreements come up for renewal I believe it's 3 years, the business is contacted to see if they would like to renew, and sometimes they aren't willing to, but this is why we also promote Pitch-In Week, to get more people involved and to promote the program to improve the community.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Councillor Hahn?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Olson. You're on mute, sir. We knew that had to happen sometime this evening.
I forgot I did that, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for recommendations for a street, I recommend for you and the CAO, Center Street from River Road to Sawmill.
Thank you for that. We will take that into consideration, Councillor Olson. Thank you.
Oh, always ready to be constructive, Your Honor.
Yes, yes. Any other comments on before we go to Councillor Hildebrand? Don't see anything else. Madam Clerk, shall we turn to Councillor Hildebrand?
So we'll first take a vote on the consent agenda, and then we will move to the lifted item. So on the consent agenda, save and accept item 8.5.1. I'll start the vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. The next item is the Town of Brock resolution for cannabis licensing and enforcement. And the motion is, be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the Town of Brock regarding the cannabis licensing and enforcement for information. And this was Councillor Hildebrand's item.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important for us to endorse and support the Township of Brock's letter to the Minister of Health Canada, Ontario, and the Agricultural, Food, and Rural Affairs Minister. So I'm asking for us to write a letter of support as a council, because obviously support of the local governments with land use, management, and enforcement issues as they relate to cannabis production and processing are very important to us.
Great. Thank you for that, Councillor. Madam Clerk, what would be required for that?
Through Mr. Mayor, that would be a motion to amend, to remove the words for information and replace them with be endorsed and supported.
And Councillor Hildebrand, I'm sure you will put that motion forward.
That's correct.
Thank you. And
So we
we
just
need
need
a
a
seconder.
Yeah.
Yep, and I see Councillor Hahn will second.
So if you'd like to call for discussion on the amendment to endorse and support.
Okay, thank you. Now that we have seen the motion, or I've heard the motion, one wants to make a comment or a question, and I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Both the federal and provincial governments were responsible for guidelines and policies related to cannabis and licensing and enforcement. These two governments have effectively left the problem of this new industry and have created, to date, handed all these problems to the municipalities for their policies and procedures for the municipalities to establish enforcement guidelines. This is absolutely the work of these two levels of government. It needs to be understood that the effects of their decisions or lack of decisions on the local municipalities is large, and that we want to support the Township of Brock and other townships that are in the same situation as us.
Great. Thank you for that, Councillor, and thank you for bringing this notice to the attention of this council. Any other comments on this? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Members of council, this vote is for the amendment only, starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. And now to the motion as amended. And I will start this motion with, sorry, just have to get my system up. I will again start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is, we don't have reports from members of council, but we do have a report by Law Enforcement Policy 2021. So I have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0069 and that policy S50205 by Law Enforcement Policy be submitted for council approval at their next regular meeting. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and discussion.
Okay, any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief. Reading through this, there's a complaint form, and then there's the option of making your complaint known through the PSR system. And my question is whether or not upon closure, do all of the items get reported through the PSR system, or is there another feedback mechanism of some kind to take care of this? And what I'm looking for in the end as an end result is some kind of report that ages and all of the open items at the end of every month. And I'm thinking the PSR system is the vehicle that we chose to use, or is there another one?
Chief, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in our CAL reports, we put out the stats for bylaw as far as complaints go. We don't limit the process to online or PSR. We allow walk-ins. We allow a number of different. The one thing we don't entertain is anonymous, continuous, vexatious, benign type things. But if someone's willing to step up in whatever fashion and file a complaint, we'll receive it in any fashion they like to deliver it. But it's all reported in our CAL.
Okay. So am I wrong in assuming that the PSR system, does it eventually get to that, or how does it work there?
Some people are very good with the PSR. I mean, the PSR is a good avenue for people that can get on a computer and navigate through. But there's just some people they don't have a computer, or they don't feel comfortable using it, so they prefer to come in and fill out a complaint form, or have someone do it for them. I've had some counselors that have stepped up for some people that don't have the capabilities of doing it, and they've done it on their behalf. We'll entertain that also.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Chief, one thing I noticed in reading it, and is that there's reactive and proactive. So up until now, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, any time a bylaw was acted upon was I believe a complaint had to be lodged. Now the proactive, it seems as if are we going to have patrols going around town, rural or urban areas, looking for infractions? Is that how I'm reading this?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, the proactive are along the lines of winter maintenance, road maintenance, where we go out and we give warnings. We don't go looking for things, but we will give the citizens a fair notice. We're come across grass season coming up, so long grass and weeds. So we go out and we do an education thing. So we proactively try to eliminate the problem before it exists. And then the reactive part of it is more of the, complaint-driven type of thing. So if we can minimize or mitigate an issue before it gets out of hand, then we will proactively pursue that. Our last, if you look at it, pragmatically, our last resort is ticketing and fining and so forth. We'll exhaust all measures before we get to that point. Unless it's a life safety hazard. I should always throw that in there if there's a a hazard like that, then we will go the different route.
Excellent. Thank you on that clarification. I had a different idea in mind when I was reading the proactive, but those examples you gave make excellent sense. Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions for the chief on this bylaw? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I can start the vote now with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Councillor Olson?
Yes, what did you want?
Yeah, just say yes. Just say yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Excellent.
And now, through you, Mr. Mayor, item 10.2.2 on the agenda. I have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2021-0067, being the 2021 Events and Festivals Update, and the recommendations within be accepted, and that staff be directed to submit 2 applications for the Reconnect funding opportunity through the Ontario Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. And that Pelham authorize the clerk to make an application for a special occasion permit for the Summer Chill Series. And that council designate the Summer Chill Series as a municipally significant event that will be held in the Peace Park on the following dates, all in 2021 from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. July 8th, July 15th, July 22nd, July 29th, August 5th, August 12th, August 19th, August 26th, September 2nd. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and discussion.
Any questions? And I see Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, this question would be then to the Director of Recreation. Just wanting to better understand the difference between the Chill Series and the Bandshell Concert Series. What's the differentiation of those 2 events, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Bandshell series is totally different. The Bandshell is the live concerts, and as you can see in the report, staff have met with the Bandshell committee with regard to this upcoming season. And at that meeting, they have indicated that they will not be holding their concerts unless the time comes that they could have up to 500 people to attend. The Chill Series is a small event that will be able to be held once there is restrictions lifted up to 100 people. So from the gray, you have red, and then orange. If we get to orange, that's when we could hold the Chill Series. And the Chill Series, what it is local restaurants that are able to come out to the park, and it's more or less like it's a controlled setting, like a patio. We have been contacted by a couple of the local restaurants asking whether anything will be happening this year. And this is one way that we could do something under the restrictions. And also what is a factor is the ministry has announced, the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture has announced the funding opportunity, which in working with the regional consultants, we've met with them a couple of times with different ideas how we could start something, and this is the 2 applications. One would be the Chill Series and the other would be the Pelham Christmas series.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes, thanks for that. So it's similar then to like a food festival, but a small food festival in that it's capped at 100 people, you said. So I guess my next question would be, is that how are you going to cap it at 100? Like how does that work? Is it like you just get tickets when they're sold out, or how are you going to do that?
No. So what would happen is they would, the actual details haven't been worked out as yet, but we would either have reservations for tables, or the other thing that is allowed, people can walk in, purchase their food and leave. So there's two aspects of it. So that they can walk in, no different than the farmer's market, but it's like a food market where they walk in, they grab their meal and they leave, or they can walk in and if tables are available, they can sit, and probably with their family.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on the Summer Chill series? And hopefully if citizens keep doing the right thing and getting vaccinated, we will get this, we will be into an orange zone by July, hopefully. Any other questions? Not seeing them, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote will start with Councillor Olson, who is on mute.
You're on mute, Councillor.
That's
Yes.
3.
That's a yes, Councillor. Thank you.
That was yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
and Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion carries. Through Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is item 10.2.3, Pelham Tennis Operations. Moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0066, Recreation, Pelham Tennis Operations 2021, and that the Town of Pelham assist both pickleball volunteers and the Pelham Tennis Association in providing programs at the Centennial Park Tennis Court, and that the following fees, effective immediately, be included in the Town of Pelham User Fee Guide. Family membership, $150. Single adult membership, $100. Single student membership, $50. Single senior membership, $50. Children 12 and under, free. Lesson fees will be determined based on competitive rates, and that staff be directed to update the fees and charges bylaw to reflect these new fees, and that staff investigate funding opportunities for capital improvements to the tennis courts due to base failure resulting in cracking. To you, Mr. Mayor, for question and comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll lead off with one question to the Director. If everything goes fine tonight, when do you expect to open the tennis courts to the public?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are hoping that we could open it prior to the end of April, and that is dependent, again, on the lockdown, of course. Staff are already looking at preparing the courts, getting things up and going, and we will work with the volunteers to get things in place.
Thank you. So under the restrictions right now, I mean, the parks are open, but tennis courts are not open?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what would have to happen is we do need some sort of a way to screen and know who is participating at the courts, and like a controlled access. And we are looking at that. Once we have that, I'm sure that we can get things open and running.
Okay, thank you for that. I know that even with the lockdown, the government is, as everyone is stressing outdoor activities should be allowed to keep going on. So I'm glad glad to hear that the staff is looking towards that end. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this report? Oh, Councillor Wink.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe more to, Mrs. Van Ravensway or the Mrs. Quinlan. Do we have anything in our budget for a temporary fix of the cracks in the court? Are they going to be taken care of at all this year?
It looks like Vicky, Ms. Van Ravensbrae?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The courts have already been, the cracks have already been basically repaired. That was the last repair that they did, and it is not working. So the cracks this year, from what we understand through the Pelham Tennis Association volunteers, Peter has stated that it's still playable and he does not see a safety concern, although obviously it's just going to get worse.
Counselor?
Yeah, so I was getting to that safety concern, whether or not the courts are safe enough for play, because we certainly don't want it to be a trip hazard, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The vote will start with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion is carried. And once again, through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is 10.2.4, the 2021 Gypsy Moth Management Program. Moved by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0065, 2021 Gypsy Moth Management Program, and the blocks identified in Report 2021-0065 be aerially sprayed for the gypsy moth in 2021. And that Council consider repealing and replacing Bylaw 4208-2020 with Bylaw 4334-2021 to allow for the implementation of an aerial spray program in 2021, and that Council approve the use of Zimmer Air Services to conduct the 2021 aerial spray program. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and comment to the Director.
Okay. Thank you. Before I do go to the councillors, I know the Director of Public Works has a couple of little things on the map that he would like to clarify. So, Jason, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The maps that are provided as an appendix to this report may be somewhat misleading. So there are two, this was a working process. The first meeting with Zimmer Air Services and our consultant Bioforest, we identified where the main areas where we should target spraying. The areas that are on the map shown in purple, outlined in purple, were those areas, and those totaled approximately 180 hectares of area to be sprayed. The budget that was passed by council was $150,000 for the gypsy moth spray program. Approximately 40,000 of that was for administration and completing the infestation surveys and part of the administration of the project, and about $5,000 for advertising and communication. So that leaves approximately $115,000 for spraying. So we had to make some more further changes to those spray blocks to get that down to about 114 hectares. So those are the areas that are shown in pink. And those two meetings were separated by about a week, where staff worked with the service provider as well as our consultant to develop those spray blocks. So on the maps that are included in the appendix, there's approximately 114 hectares, and those are the areas identified and delineated by the pink. So those are the areas that will be sprayed as part of the 2021 spray program, pending council approval. And the information that gets displayed on our website with respect to the areas that are actually being sprayed, we'll modify these maps and provide that information so that it's highlighted only specifically the areas that are being intended to be sprayed as part of the 2021 program.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Director. I saw Councillor Wink's hand up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, that explanation hit on my question. So thank you for that, Mr. Marr.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. Are we spraying any areas twice, 2 years in a row, or are these separate areas?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, some of the areas are the same as last year. Obviously, the areas that were sprayed last year were heavily infested, and based on our last report that we provided to this council, it's showing that the areas that were treated last year did work. They were effective in controlling the infestation levels. However, some of those areas that are being treated again were heavily infested, and based on the infestation surveys that were completed this winter, still show the potential for severe infestation levels and severe defoliation in those areas. So some of them, yes, will be sprayed again, areas that were sprayed last year, but there are a number of new areas throughout the town in both Fonthill and Fenwick that are going to be sprayed that weren't included in the program last year.
Councillor?
You.
Okay. If I could ask Mr. Cook a question. The percentage has gone up a little bit more in Fenwick, I believe, some areas in South Fenwick. Is that correct to make that statement, sir?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. We are spraying a little bit more in Fenwick this year, based on the defoliation surveys and the expectation that there'll be a lot more defoliation in certain areas in South Fenwick, particularly.
Thank you. And do we have an idea, and I'm sure we do, how much more did the cost of of Zimmer's services increase this year over last year? Do we have that figure, or do we have to wait?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost of spraying per hectare is essentially up about $11 per hectare over the 2020 project. The cost per hectare, it depends on how you want to look at it. The cost per hectare was about $876 last year per hectare. This year it is $920, but that also includes the ferrying cost. So outside of the cost per hectare in 2020 was the ferrying cost, and essentially the cost of flying a helicopter here 2 times and back home to London. So when you add the ferrying cost to the per hectare price, it equals about $913 is what we paid per hectare last year.
Great, thank you for that. And one last question to you, sir. There's the amount of rainfall can make quite a difference, and I forget, is it dry that limits them, and wet they produce more, or which way is it? And I'll hope for that kind of a spring.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I also hope for that kind of spring. Unfortunately, that is not the spring that we're getting currently. The cool, wet temperatures bring about a certain fungus that grows that affects the gypsy moth reproduction. So we are not receiving that type of spring at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Cook. Any other questions to either Mr. Cook or the director on the gypsy moth program? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The voting will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that motion is carried. And members of council, the next item on the agenda is under unfinished business. And I have a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0064, update report, proxy voting for members of council. And that council further receive report 2021-0001, consideration of the procedural bylaw amendment, proxy voting for absent members, or for absent municipal council members, Bill 197, attached as Appendix 1, which was referred to a future meeting back in February. And that council not proceed with amendments to the procedural bylaw to permit proxy voting by members of council. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or discussion.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on this report? I see Councillor Wink's hand up first.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just comments. So I support the staff recommendation not to proceed with any form of proxy voting. In the last 2 months, the topic of proxy voting by residents has been the most prevalent topic of discussion with myself. Not one resident supported the notion of proxy voting. Proxy voting is not an open, transparent process and does not allow for debate and exchange of ideas. The current electronic process allows for councillors to attend meetings regardless of their physical location. As a case in point, I was able to attend council's recent closed session from a remote location. For these reasons, I cannot support proxy voting.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I saw Councillor Hildebrand's hand. Yes, Councillor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I as well appreciate the comments that Councillor Wink has made, and will be supporting the report. The question I have for the clerk is, what is the status of electronic voting? If you could update us on that.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. As the report outlines, Bill 197 amended the Municipal Act to permit electronic meetings wherein councillors can attend, and this does count toward the quorum of a meeting. So members of council can attend electronically, which we are doing now, obviously, and that does count toward quorum, whereas proxy voting does not. At the present time, our procedural bylaw permits electronic meetings in this fashion until the end of August, and the incoming clerk will be preparing a report for council's consideration to explore extending electronic meeting participation on a more permanent basis, or at least an extension of that.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But like Councillor Wink stated, I think electronic voting is an excellent tool for us to use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, first off, I'd just like to take the time to thank the clerk. Really appreciate this report and the time you've taken. And I think that I feel more comfortable having done my due diligence and asking for a report coming back so I can fully understand what the parameters would look like. You've let us know now that it was really only Peel that has put this out there, and that Peel has a very different reason and rationale for using it. So that's very helpful to have that knowledge. So now that I understand where it's being used and where it isn't, and how, it's enabled me to make a decision, and I feel better about that decision. So thank you very much for the time you've taken to make that report, Clerk.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Kaur?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. After reading the report on page 134, Dr. Siegel, if I'm pronouncing it right, from Brock University, mentioned that supporting a notion that a member of council could enter a meeting with one view, but switch views because of the nature of the discussion, or sometime a member of the board might present one of those surprise blockbuster bits of information that would put the issue in a whole different light. And in a nutshell, he's absolutely right. And I would not be supporting proxy voting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my comment was I will not support proxy voting either. But my reason is because I find that there's a great deal of value in listening to other people's ideas and possibilities, and I think it's not just the residents but the leadership shown by council, and I appreciate having that opportunity to hear it. for that reason, I would vote against it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. My own feelings are, I've always stated the times that this has come before council, that I didn't believe that proxy voting was something that that should be taken on in a municipal council. I'm glad this will be put to rest, hopefully, at the end of this vote. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there are no further questions or comments, the voting starts with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, that motion passes. And the next item on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of bylaws. Members of council, I would like to point out that, sorry, I just need to look at my bylaws here. So I would like to point out that as it relates to the Mountain View Homes motion that was passed earlier in the meeting, if council would entertain lifting the last bylaw 4336 of 2021, and refer this back to staff.
Is there a council member that will do this? I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, please lift it and refer back to staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder?
Yes, we'll need a seconder.
And a seconder on this motion. I see Councillor Hahn.
So before I present the rest of the bylaws for council to consider, we'll take a vote on referring this one back to staff, and then the bylaw would come after the staff report is finally considered and approved on that matter. So I'll start the vote with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. And now on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn, be it resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same. And that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 4333 being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 4068 of 2019, confirming the various appointments to boards, commissions, and committees to the Town of Pelham, and to remove and appoint members to the Pelham Art Committee under Schedule O. Bylaw 4334 of 2021 being a bylaw authorizing the implementation of a 2021 spray program respecting the gypsy moth, and to repeal and replace Bylaw 4208 of 2020. Bylaw 4335 of 2021 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136/1987 as amended for lands located at 855 Chandler Road, north side of Chandler Road, lying west of Church Street, legally described as Concession 12 and part of Lot 17 in the Town of Pelham. The zoning bylaw amendment rezones the lands from Agricultural A zone to follow site-specific zones Agricultural 304 and Agricultural 305. Joyce and John Sonneville, file AM01 2021. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or comments on the bylaws.
Any questions, comments on any of these bylaws? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the voting will start with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion is carried. And I will just record that vote in the system and move to the next item on the agenda, being the motions and notices of motion.
Yeah.
So the motion on the floor at the present time.
Excuse me, Madam Clerk. I should probably announce my notice of motion, perhaps?
Actually, I have that one listed after the motions.
Okay.
So we'll present the motions first. I've listed that as agenda item 14.3.
Okay.
So at the present time, just for the viewing public, the mayor is going to step away from the chair. This portion of the meeting will be chaired by the most current deputy mayor, Councillor Hildebrand. So Councillor Hildebrand, the mayor will now present his motion with regard to the Steve Bauer Trail.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Over to
you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So I have a motion, pretty self-explanatory. I will read it. And it is, I'm going to go like this. Whereas Council for the Town of Pelham recently approved hard surfacing along the Steve Bauer Trail between 1106 Line Avenue and Port Robinson Road, and whereas it is recognized that the minimum maintenance standards and Pelham's winter operations policy provide that paved sidewalks and multi-use paths are cleared of snow and ice. However, due to the fact that the Steve Bauer Trail is a recreation trail that is not maintained during the winter months as noted in the staff report number 2020-0080, winter maintenance has not been undertaken during the 2020-2021 winter season. And whereas this hard surface area of the Steve Bauer Trail between 1106 Line Avenue and Port Robinson Road has experienced a significant increase in multi-use participants since the paving has been completed, now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to provide a report outlining the estimated additional cost that would be associated with including this portion of the trail in the contract for sidewalk and multi-use path snow clearing as part of the 2022 budget, and that the report be provided for council's consideration prior to the 2022 budget deliberations. And if I may talk to this motion, Councillor?
Yes, please proceed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sure all of us, in the course of this last winter, have had numerous residents contact us about slippery conditions on the trail. I know that when the council approved the hard surfacing of this trail, several councillors, and I believe I was one of them, we were against having to do any winter maintenance on this trail, cost effective as that would be. But I think situations have changed. The pandemic has definitely had people stay at home more, and as they stay home, they want to get out and exercise more. And because we have indeed paved that trail, it does seem to be getting a lot more use as in previous years. So for that reason, I would ask council to approve this motion, and we have a report that will bring back the cost of this service to the residents, and then we could act accordingly during public budget deliberations. That's my reasons for the motion, Councillor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that report. Councillor Wynn, comments?
So I'm in support of the mayor's motion. This was a topic of discussion at the March Pelham Active Transportation Committee. At that time, Mr. Marr indicated that he would bring back recommendations to council, but Mayor beat him to the punch. So thank you for that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Are there any other councillors that have a comment or a question? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, may we proceed with the vote?
Thank you. Yes, I'll call the vote, starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes, please.
And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda has been referred to the April 19th agenda, so that brings us to your notice of motion, new on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will be bringing a motion next council meeting on the 19th, and I will be requesting staff to bring the council to determine a cost and method of erosion control for the headwaters of the 12-Mile Creek north of Highway 20, receiving the water from the town's stormwater management pond at the corner of Highway 20 and Rice Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hahn?
Deputy Mayor, I'm just wondering if I might bring a notice of motion. I know I didn't mention it earlier, and I apologize. Am I willing, or am I able to do a notice of motion?
Madam Clerk?
If all of council is in agreement,
Yeah.
there's no objection.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shall I go forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. My notice of motion, and I will bring this forward at the next council meeting for a vote to council, will be that the town of Pelham rescind the approved motion made by the previous council regarding the uptake of governance for and transfer and operating authority of the Niagara Central Dorothy Rendlin Airport and the Niagara District Airport to the Niagara region, and the council approve retaining the governance and ownership of the Niagara Central Dorothy Rendlin Airport. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, I've noted that. And the next item on the agenda, moved by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that, I just want to double check my electronic agenda and make sure that we are on target here. My system is frozen, of course. So, be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being a bylaw 4337-2021, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 6th day of April, 2021. And I'll start the vote with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, that motion carries.
Oh, but I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, of all the nights for this to happen, we have indeed left one member or one item off the agenda. I don't know how it happened, but and if with your willingness, I'll put this agenda on. I'll read this.
Well, we haven't adjourned yet, so.
Thank you. Okay, so this evening, the last item on the agenda, and the clerk will have to forgive me for breaking procedure, is to wish our town clerk, Nancy Bozzato, a happy retirement. Since 2010, Nancy has been sitting in these chambers, guiding our council meetings with professionalism, grace, and deep-rooted knowledge of the Municipal Act and how a council meeting should be run. Without fail, Nancy has had answers ready to the questions we've all asked her. Whether it be procedural or for information, council has always been the recipient of a thoughtful and correct response. After more than 40 years of service to her communities, local and regional, Nancy is retiring. This is her last meeting as clerk. On behalf of Pelham Town Council, past and present, I would like to thank you for your dedication, hard work, honesty, ethics, and professionalism as you faithfully and dutifully served as town clerk. The long hours spent poring over agendas can now be spent poring over drinks on the dock. Though we at Town Hall are losing you, your family is gaining you. Knowing the family-oriented person you are, Nancy, I do not doubt that the job you are most looking forward to now is that of daughter, wife, mother, and grandmother. Thank you for all that you have done for the town of Pelham. We are all the better for it. I wish you a happy and full, long retirement on behalf of council.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, I just want to express my appreciation to this beautiful community of Pelham. It has been an honor and a privilege as a third generation Hollingshead and now Bizzato to serve this community, and I wish everyone every bit of success, continued success in our beautiful Pelham community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent.
And thank you.
Now I will adjourn the meeting.
And that was on a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur, that the regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting of April 19th. And I'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes, and congratulations.
Thank you. And Councillor Kaur.
Congratulations, and yes.
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes, congratulations, Nancy.
Thank you. And Mayor Junkin.
Yes, and all the best.
Thank you. And that motion carries. All the very best to all of you. And you may go.
Oh. Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Wow.
Very good, Nancy. A career wrapped up.
Wow.
That's good.